huge news today. The Department of Justice issued a memorandum laying out its enforcement priorities with respect to marijuana enforcement at the federal level. And it's really actually way bigger than the news outlets are reporting right now.
Okay, so we've seen something like this before. Could you explain how it's a little bit different from the Ogden memo of 2009?
Absolutely, yeah. The Ogden memo that was issued in October of 2009 actually set a very high bar for compliance, because what it said is that you have to be in, quote, clear and unambiguous compliance with state law in order to be in compliance with federal law, in order to avoid prosecution or raids from federal officials and prosecution by U.S. attorneys. That's actually a pretty high bar, because at any given point, any one of us may not be in clear and unambiguous compliance with any law. So it's actually a very, very high bar to pass. Of course, that Ogden memo from October of 2009 was then amended by another memo in June of 2011 that was bad, and it really rolled back some of the protections that we saw in the Ogden memorandum. Since that time, we've really been holding our breath to see what is the federal government going to do with respect to marijuana enforcement broadly, but of course also in response to Colorado and Washington. And the thing that is really interesting about this is that this memo is being reported basically in major news publications as, the state of Washington and Colorado the states allowed to move forward with their marijuana legalization laws. This memo goes way, way farther than that. Basically what it says is that it's applying to all states. So this is a memo that went to all U.S. attorneys' offices, every single one of them in all 50 states, and it lays out 8 enforcement priorities that they're supposed to look for. But in any given state in the nation, if there's somebody growing marijuana, if they are not diverting to minors, if they're not appealing to minors, if they're not funneling their proceeds to the cartels or gangs, if they're not diverting it between state lines, if they're not using it as a cover or pretext to sell other drugs, if they're not involved in violence or have firearms, if they're not contributing to drug driving. Sorry, phones are ringing off the hook. So if you're not involved in violence, if you're not involved in the use of a firearm, not contributing to drug driving, not growing marijuana on public lands or possessing or using it on federal property, then the U.S. attorneys are instructed to back off of those cases. So that is really remarkable. Of course, this memo can't change the underlying law, the Controlled Substances Act. We have to have Congress and the President work together to change the Controlled Substances Act. But really, this memo goes way, way farther than most people are giving it credit for at this point. It is an enormous political victory. In all of my years doing this, I've been working on legalizing marijuana for 10 years now, and this is by far the biggest event ever to happen. It's bigger than Colorado and Washington legalizing marijuana, because we've been waiting for this day where we would test the federal government's response to marijuana legalization at the state level, and today we got it, and it's really kind of amazing. Without changing the underlying law, the Controlled Substances Act, this is essentially as far as the administration could possibly go in terms of deprioritizing marijuana prosecutions. I'm not going to say it's as far as they could go, but it's just about as far as they could go within their administrative executive power to take action here and to really meaningfully adjust the way this nation has conducted an insane war on marijuana over the decades. So this is really a historic day.
So it's definitely safe to say then that this is a prominent step forward for drug policy reform, and as reformers we should be excited.
Yeah, we should be very excited. This is a huge step forward. It is way beyond the breadth of the Ogden or previous Cole memos. It actually even goes back on one of the provisions in the June 2011 Cole memorandum that was bad about large-scale marijuana operations. They've used that memorandum from 2011 to justify going after wonderful operators like Steve D'Angelo at Harborside, and outrageously going after him in a persecution campaign against Harborside, saying that it was because they were too big. This memo goes back on that. This memo says that they're no longer supposed to be pursuing operators simply because of the size of their operation. So lots of good stuff in this memo.
Great.
You know, this is actually like the Berlin Wall falling. I mean, in terms of marijuana legalization, this is equivalent to the Berlin Wall falling. So I'm so proud that our students in Colorado, the Students for Sensible Drug Policy, has been part of this. It warms my heart. I mean, 18,000 calls to Colorado voters last fall. It's really amazing to be part of this.